Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to today's segment, the 28th day of September. We're looking out the window here in Brisbane, where we're streaming from. It is partly sunny and partly cloudy. Well, of course, partly cloudy, so partly sunny. But it is looking like an amazing day out here in Brisbane. It's very, very comfortable temperature. It's not too cold. Just a little bit slightly on the cooler side rather than on the warmer side, and being at 20 degrees. So, the clouds are going to be in around the rest of the day. Well, right now, moving on, we have lots to talk about today. But one of the things that people have on their mind now is Christmas. Christmas is around the corner, yes? What is going to happen? Are we going to see our loved ones? Will we be able to travel? What are your holiday plans if they're going to be a holiday? Queensland. But overall, let's take a look at whole of Australia and see when Australia might be opening, or would we open by Christmas?
Australia's ban on international travel means it's been almost 2 years since Jill Harris has been back to the UK to see her family.
Oh my goodness me, who's that? Who says, who's that?
Instead, her mother's had to get to know 7-month-old Harry through video calls.
We speak to Grandma every day. She doesn't want to miss out on a thing, and she's desperate for a cuddle if we can get home for Christmas.
Ms Harris is hoping to fulfil her mother's Christmas wish, but she's nervous about the flight she's booked home with Qantas.
We just love a bit of certainty as soon as possible.
The problem is, while some airlines are selling overseas flights from mid-December, there is no set date for reopening the international borders. Last week, the Federal Tourism Minister said he hoped they would be open by Christmas at the latest. But airlines want more clarity than that.
We do not know yet where Australians will be allowed to travel.
Singapore Airlines recently cancelled additional flights to Australia because of the ongoing uncertainty, leaving many citizens stranded overseas.
We don't have that clarity around whether international arrival caps will continue to be in place come December, and whether or not or how incoming passengers will be treated and classified.
Before the pandemic, 52 airlines flew to Australia, but now there are only 18. The peak body for international carriers says the confusion could mean some airlines don't rush back.
So if US start to open up a lot more and you can start flying much more to Europe, for example, then guess what? They are just going to take their services over there.
Quarantine is another sticking point, with only South Australia and New South Wales trialling self-isolation at home so far.
Parts of Europe and USA, in terms of the domestic regional travels, are already taking off quite nicely, and because there's no quarantine required.
Jill Harris is prepared to postpone her trip if they have to quarantine in a hotel when they get back.
We just don't think that having Harry will be 10 months old by then in a hotel for 2 weeks would work.
COVID-19 is changing the way we travel.
Then there's the issue of vaccine certificate verification. Passengers will likely be required to declare which jab they've had and take COVID tests.
So you can once again be reunited with family and friends.
Most passengers think it'll be January 2020 all over again, free travel, go wherever you like, no issues, no problems. That is so far from the truth, because there's COVID testing before you leave. There's COVID testing on arrival.
For those who can get overseas, analysts say price gouging is unlikely to happen.
What we're going to see is airlines really putting some attractive pricing out there to get people across the line, to get them to travel internationally.
Airlines want a national approach to restarting overseas travel, but that's unlikely when states like Western Australia, Queensland and Tasmania are already backing away from the plan to reopen borders when 80% of Australians over 16 are fully vaccinated. In Perth, new father Ming Ming Chen and his wife fear it'll be a long time before his family can travel here to meet their daughter. That's because it's unclear if Australia will recognise vaccines like Sinovac.
It's actually created some emotional stress for the whole families, so we have to rely a lot on our friends.
Until then, this is as close as they'll get to their relatives in China.
That is reality at the moment because, regardless of what cultural background you're from, everyone's sort of facing that situation where, the grandkids, the way they get to know their grandparents is via those virtual mediums at the moment. This is the sign of times. So Christmas is around the corner. It might be happening, and we might have a Christmas break. We'll see. Well, right now, let's look at the center of this situation, and let's hear from Dr. Norman Swan.
A third dose 6 months after your second dose.
Israel has already vaccinated 2,000 immunosuppressed people with a third dose.
Moves by some countries globally to introduce booster shots threaten the promise of a brighter tomorrow for Africa.
More than 6 billion doses of COVID vaccines have been administered globally. Now, superficially, that looks good, with 44% of the world's population having had at least one dose. But that hides a gross imbalance. Most have gone to middle and high-income countries. Only 2% of people in low-income countries have had at least one dose. That statistic is at the core of opposition to vaccine booster doses.
We need to get more people having their first jab right round the world before we worry about third doses, which are like giving, as the WHO says, a life raft 3 times over when many people don't have their first life raft.
Much of the impetus for boosters has come from Israel, where they've been observing declining levels of COVID antibodies in immunised people aged over 60. In late July, they began a booster program which now extends to anyone over the age of 12.
When we look at the numbers of the immunity after 6 months for people that got only 2 doses, we see that went down to 20 to 40%. So we're going to say 30% in average of protection from symptomatic disease. But when you get your booster shot, after 1 week, it goes up back to 85%, and after 2 weeks, around 95%.
Israeli researchers recently published their early findings on boosters in over 60-year-olds.
We can clearly see that if you are vaccinated with a booster shot, your chances to get into severe conditions are 10 times less than if you are vaccinated only with 2 doses.
It's results like these which have prompted several countries to implement booster shots. But in the United States, that's been divisive.
The decision of which booster shots to give, when to start them, and who will give them will be left completely to the scientists at the FDA and the Centers for Disease Control.
The trouble for the administration was that 2 expert committees, including one at the Centers for Disease Control, only recommended shots for a limited group of Americans. But late last week, the director overrode that expert advice.
Had I been in the room and on the committee, I would have voted yes. And that is reflected in my resulting decision to allow the use of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 booster dose for those 18 and older at high risk of COVID-19 exposure and transmission because of occupational and institutional exposure.
This is not our first emergency.
Dr. Walensky opted for boosters for the over 65s, younger people with underlying health conditions, and frontline workers. But some say that important data are still lacking. Epidemiologist Dr. Ira Longini co-authored a paper critical of boosters.
Boosters have not been shown to be safe yet. They're probably safe, but we don't have the data to back that up. We don't know if boosters are effective, except for possibly very short term.
A lot of this hinges on the Israeli data, which have been criticized for not being representative of the population as a whole.
I can understand the criticism. I would say the situation is clear. If you get your booster shot, you are less at risk than people that got 2 doses. So I don't think that there is such a huge bias. True, I agree. We would have preferred to have more time in order to make better assessments. And I can tell you personally that more studies are coming.
So what about us? Infectious diseases expert Professor Robert Boy says that double dose protection is strong and sustained.
Quite simply, if you have any vaccine, whether it's in a young child, an adult or an elderly person, the antibody level peaks after a month or two and it always declines over the next 6 or 12 months. That's nothing new. We expect that to happen. But the protection that you get is maintained.
Important new data just released from the UK tell us more about protection against COVID infection. Your defences are better after vaccination if you're younger and if you've already had a COVID infection. But it also shows that Pfizer protection does decline by about 20% per month, while interestingly, Astra protection seems to be sustained.
I would say very strongly that people who've had 2 doses in Australia, even if they're in the front line and their antibody level is declining, they will still get good protection against Delta, and they will continue to get good protection over the course of the coming months. I don't expect them to need a booster. I think it's wasteful. I think it's potentially immoral.
One group who almost everyone agrees deserves a 3rd dose of vaccine are people whose immune systems aren't working well.
It's really important to emphasise that people who've had chemotherapy, high-dose steroids, bone marrow transplant, they may not have responded at all to the first 2 doses. And about a third to a half will respond to a 3rd dose. So it's important to cover off on the immunosuppressed people really well, and they do need a 3rd dose sooner than anyone else.
Meantime,
so breaking news here from Queensland is that Anastasia Palaszczuk, our Premier, has just sent us a message that she will be speaking at a media conference at around 9:45 this morning. The Chief Health Officer and Health Minister will then provide a detailed COVID-19 update at 10:30 a.m. A public health alert is being issued for the locations in Eaton Hills, Albany Creek, Aspley, Rockley, following a confirmed case of COVID-19 in Brisbane. The source of infection is under investigation. The man in his 30s works in the aviation industry with no recent history of overseas or interstate travel. The case will be reported in tomorrow's COVID-19 data. Further information on the case will be provided at the press conference. We urge all Queenslanders to check the contact tracing website and follow the health advice. If you have any of those locations, visit www.health.qld.gov.au/tracing for more information. With anyone with COVID-19 symptoms, no matter how mild, should get tested as soon as practical. A list of testing sites, including opening times, is available at www.qld.gov.au/COVID-19 testing. So, we will bring to you via this channel the update as soon as that comes on hand, as soon as that's released. Now, looking at our parliament, Australia is fast becoming a very culturally diverse nation. So do we have diverse representation in our parliament? Let's take a look as it's been reported in this clip.
The federal electorate of Fowler in Sydney's southwest is one of Australia's most culturally diverse. A safe Labor seat since it was formed in 1984, it's where aspiring politician Tu Le lives.
My parents came to Australia as refugees after the Vietnam War, and I think that that's a very common experience with a lot of people my age who had parents had migrated to Australia and were born here and grew up in southwest Sydney. This community, it's just part of who I am. And it's a reflection of Australia as well.
Initially endorsed by the retiring incumbent Chris Hayes, the 30-year-old lawyer and former Fowler campaign manager had hoped to run for Labor at the next election.
To just be the champion for my community and to stand up for my community, particularly for issues that are important to the people and affect our everyday lives. And I'm basically a nobody within the Labor Party.
Do you think that political nobodies should be in federal parliament?
Yes, I think that there is room for everybody in federal parliament, and as a representative democracy, we need to be representative of the communities that we seek to serve.
One thing we know about Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
But Lee's hopes were dashed after Labor parachuted in star candidate Senator Christina Keneally, who lives outside the electorate.
The biggest disappointment is what it means for a community as a whole to feel like they are taken for granted.
Senator Keneally would have lost her existing seat because of a factional deal on Labor's Senate ticket, and moving to a safe lower house seat will likely guarantee she keeps her job. But it's raised questions about how political parties treat grassroots candidates.
The communities in Fowler need a voice at the highest levels of government. And I want to step forward to be that voice.
Christina Keneally was born in the United States, came to Australia, and is another great Australian success story of a migrant who's come here and became the New South Wales Premier.
The former Prime Minister, Paul Keating, has also backed Christina Keneally as a huge executive talent who can fight for a greater share of the national income. In Fowler, some community members have been quick to support her.
What our community needs right now is someone that has a really strong leadership ability to help us, fight for us, and serve and represent us. Yeah, and I think Christina is the best candidate for that.
Christina Keneally is experienced. The Labor Party gets the benefit of that, her performance, her potential entry to the House, a potential minister if the Labor Party win the election. Lee would be a first-term member. It is a missed opportunity to have someone from a Vietnamese background hold Fowler, which has the highest concentration of Vietnamese background people in Australia. So it's a missed opportunity there, but there are other opportunities you get by having Christina Keneally.
There are few politicians in the federal parliament of 227 members with Asian or South Asian heritage. Labor's Penny Wong, the Coalition's Gladys Liu, Ian Goodenough and Dave Sharma, and Marine Faruqi for the Greens. That compares with an estimated 14% of Australia's population with Asian ancestry.
When you look around the parliament, we have 95% coming from Anglo-Celtic or European background, and I personally would love to see more people from the multicultural background, especially from the Asian Australian background.
Lee's experience with the political machine here in Fowler has resonated with other Vietnamese Australians elsewhere. In Victoria, a group of young leaders has told 730 they want to see more people like them in the federal parliament one day. These three friends ran separately as independent candidates in local government elections in Melbourne last year. All were elected and are now deputy mayors across 3 different councils. They've been organising food parcels for needy families during the city's lockdown.
I think it's really hypocritical for political parties to claim that they champion diversity, yet at the first opportunity to do so, they parachute an outsider in, and I think it's really disappointing.
I feel like political parties tend to take people from multicultural backgrounds for granted, and I think political parties need to do better. They need to actually walk the talk in actually prioritising diverse representation in their candidates.
The system is currently failing the multicultural community, let alone the Vietnamese community. The lack thereof of pathways going forward, the diverse youth often feel as if this is not even a career choice or a career opportunity they could even consider in the first place. People think that you have to be of a specific demographic to enter the political realm.
So there's Gough Whitlam, a mighty man, as it says here, and everybody knows that he lived in Cabramatta.
Back in Fowler, Lee is being courted by other political parties, but she's undecided about what her next steps will be.
Can't keep relying on multiculturalism as this great legacy of the Labor Party. I think it's something that needs to continually be worked upon, and we can't just sit back and accept things. We're a changing society, things are progressing, and we need to be attuned to that.
So there you go. There's been the calls, and of course we have all had that calls even here in Queensland, where we have had some budding candidates in different electorates locally and federally level, vying for those positions. But of course, being a democratic country, you need to be elected, and it's the general public who elect. So it is. Slowly moving that way. We're getting few of the representatives from the multicultural community in, but it's still not enough if you look at the numbers there. Well, right now it's time to go to our Daily India report. With that, let's welcome to Ankita.
Welcome to the Daily India report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3-day USA visit for bilateral, multilateral discussions is being labelled as a landmark one. Top Indian officials said Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi US visit was a landmark one on both bilateral and multilateral fronts. Modi himself said at the end of his 3-day visit that he was confident India-US strategic relationship will grow to new heights. In the final leg, Modi addressed the 76th session of the United Nations Security Council, attended the first in-person Quad Summit, and held bilateral and multilateral engagements with US President Biden, US Vice President Kamala Harris, and his counterparts from Australia Scott Morrison and from Japan Yoshihide Suga. Modi also lobbied 5 top American CEOs to step up their investments in India. Modi also brought home 157 artifacts and antiquities handed over to India by the US during his visit. President Biden said the two nations should strengthen efforts to combat theft, illicit trade and trafficking of cultural objects. Half of the artifacts are cultural, the other half 60 consist of figurines related to Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. Items represent a diverse range from the 1.5-meter bas-relief panel of Revanta in sandstone of the 10th CE to the 8.5-centimeter tall, exquisite bronze Nataraj from the 12th CE. US President Joe Biden and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi condemned cross-border terror, called for 26/11 perpetrators to be brought to justice. US President Joe Biden joined Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in condemning cross-border terrorism and called for the perpetrators of the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks to be brought to justice. Meeting for their first in-person bilateral on September 25th, neither leader directly mentioned Pakistan, but the reference was obvious. They also denounced any use of terrorist proxies and emphasized the importance of denying any logistical, financial or military support to terrorist groups which could be used to launch and plan terror attacks. The leaders reaffirmed their stand to take concerted action against all terrorist groups, including groups proscribed by the UN 1267 Sanctions Committee. Indian Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla said in a briefing that President Biden and Prime Minister Modi gave very careful consideration on the support given to certain hardline elements in Afghanistan, including terrorist groups by a neighbor of Afghanistan.
The two sides underscored the importance of combating terrorism in Afghanistan. They called on Taliban to adhere to these and all of its commitments under Resolution 2593. That includes obviously the issue of, as I said, ensuring that Afghan territory is not used to threaten or attack any countries, to shelter or train terrorist groups, to plan or finance terrorist attacks, and underscored, as I said, the importance of combating terrorism in Afghanistan. It also called upon the respect to human rights of women, children, minorities, provision of humanitarian assistance and access to humanitarian workers, and of course called upon the two sides to secure an inclusive political negotiated settlement in Afghanistan.
The US and India would be organizing a counter-terrorism joint working group meeting, a designations dialogue, and there is also going to be a renewed US-India Homeland Security dialogue in the areas of law enforcement and security. Both nations will develop counter-terrorism technologies. Modi also raised with Biden an expanding access for Indian professionals to the US and the H-1B visa process. Modi's discussions with US Vice President Harris also emphasized counter-terrorism efforts and the need to closely monitor Pakistan's support for terrorist groups. Developing country heads of government have hailed India's leadership in COVID-19, praising its pledge to restart vaccine exports again. Speaking at the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi did not name Pakistan but unleashed an attack on India's neighbor of using terror as a political tool. Pointing to the Taliban takeover, Modi said the situation in Afghanistan was being used by the neighboring country as a tool for benefiting itself. Modi urged the international community to help women, children and minorities affected by the Taliban rule in Afghanistan. As an example of India's vibrant democracy, Modi said he, a child of a tea stall owner in India, was addressing the UNGA for the 4th time as Prime Minister of India. Modi pointed out how India is making great strides on the path of development and said he wouldn't relent on reforms and bold steps to achieve more progress. He highlighted India's achievements in the fight against the COVID-19 by making the world's first DNA vaccine for COVID-19 for all above the age of 12 and ongoing work as a nasal vaccine. Several heads of African and South American countries thanked him and India as a global hub of COVID vaccine production and for Modi's pledge to restart exports soon. Africa and South America have vaccinated only 26% of population and India's pledge to supply vaccines is significant. Modi used the visit to demonstrate India's soft power as he gave unique gifts to foreign dignitaries. Modi also indirectly attacked China, saying resources available in the oceans are meant to be used and not abused. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Pradhan Mantri National Digital Health Mission with Digital Health ID for all on 27 September. In a historic initiative, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has launched the Pradhan Mantri National Digital Health Mission via video conferencing on 27 September 2021. India's focus is to scale up healthcare infrastructure and services across the country. The mission will create a smooth online health ecosystem by providing a range of data, infrastructure and information services on a common platform where every citizen can securely upload and access their health records. It will enable the long-term exchange of health records between patients and doctors with the former's consent. The key component of PMNDHM is a unique health ID for every citizen created by entering details of the Aadhaar card and registered mobile number. This will also act as a health account to which all reports, prescriptions and diagnosis records can be linked. These can then be accessed or viewed via a mobile phone application, a healthcare professionals registry and healthcare facilities registries. It will act as a bank of listed healthcare providers of modern and traditional medicine across doctors and hospitals. Canada has allowed direct flights from India starting 27 September. Canada has allowed direct flights from India starting 27 September 2021, lifting the ban of more than 5 months. Announcing the decision, Transport Canada said in a tweet, quote, "Beginning September 27th, direct flights from India can land in Canada with additional public health measures in place. Travelers must have proof of a negative COVID-19 molecular test from the approved laboratory at the Delhi airport taken within 18 hours of the scheduled departure of their direct flight to Canada." Welcoming the decision, Indian High Commissioner to Canada Ajay Bisaria called it as a decisive step towards normalizing air mobility between the two nations. Passengers who travel from India to Canada via an indirect route still need to provide a pre-departure negative COVID-19 molecular test result from a third country before continuing their journey to Canada. Indian External Affairs Minister is on a 3-day visit to Mexico to expand trade and other relations. For boosting bilateral cooperation, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is on a 3-day visit in Mexico on 26 September. This is Jaishankar's first visit to Mexico as External Affairs Minister. Discussions will focus on trade and investment and other areas. Mexico is India's second largest trade partner in Latin America. The External Affairs Minister participated in the commemorative events of the 200th anniversary of the consolidation of Mexican independence along with other leaders. Jaishankar met with Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard Casabon and will call on the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The minister will also interact with the leading CEOs and the business community in Mexico. Telugu superstars Nag Chaitanya and Sai Pallavi are being credited for a stellar performance in the film Love Story that is bound to become the biggest blockbuster in India and USA. Bollywood is emerging from 18 months of COVID-19 meltdown with some super hits. Telugu superstar Nag Chaitanya's latest Love Story waited for over a year since the first scheduled release on April 2, 2020. The film finally released in theatres on September 24, 2021. Box office collections stand at a whopping 100 million worldwide. The biggest surprise is from the Nizam release centres of around 35 million on day one. With a strong word of mouth and the weekend, the ticket sales were huge. The film may be the biggest opener in India post the second COVID wave and had magical release at the USA premieres and regular shows on day one. This could provide the needed oxygen for other filmmakers to dare release their films in theatres before going for direct OTT streaming. The film has a major star cast to pull the audiences. Nag Chaitanya and Sai Pallavi are receiving great appreciation for their performance in the film. In breaking news today, Bharat Bandh again by protesting farmers who have blocked highways, rail tracks affecting Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab and Haryana routes. Punjab state police officials have issued instructions to ensure law and order at protest places. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much for that update, Ankita. And as we know, the Daily India Report comes your way from Tuesday through till Saturday, and it is a very comprehensive report of what's happening there, and of course a bit of international and the Indian diaspora news in there as well. So it is a presentation of the PIO TV for Australian Indian Radio. So right now, it's wonderful to have your company. Let's take a look, message from our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Asha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is there well. And don't forget that tomorrow from 10 a.m. we will have the real estate update with Usha Chandra right here on this very channel. Right now it's time to look at some of the functions and events taking place here in and around Brisbane.
not doing anything on Sunday the 10th of October from 10 to 5, please come along to the Callaway Hotel. It's the very first Indian Cultural Expo and it's for women in business. It's going to be awesome.
Namaste everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you to the Indian Cultural Expo, which will be held at the Callaway Hotel on the 10th of October at 10 a.m. It's really easy to remember, just think 10th of the 10th at 10 a.m. It will have many different things to celebrate the Indian culture and to warmly welcome you all for this wonderful expo. So come along and join me at 10 a.m. on the 10th of October at the Callaway Hotel. See you there.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for in this segment. And very soon we'll be bringing you in touch with what the updates are in terms of the COVID situation right here in Queensland. Well, in fact, we might be joining with that stream in a minute or so. Let's see if we can join into that. So it's been wonderful having your company as usual. As we know, we're trying to bring to you everything local, international, and of course anything that might be of interest to the community. And it is always good to see your company and always good to get that feedback from you of what it is meaning to you, and some of the comments that come your way. We really appreciate the comments that have been made, and the Premier is just about to come on live. We are just establishing that connection. As soon as we are able to connect with the Premier, we will bring her live on the show. As we know, today is a very, very important announcement that she has got to make on that case that has been discovered. And the thing that about the case was that it was discovered and it's an aviation worker who has not been overseas or interstate lately. So it's a bit of a mystery of about what's happened and how did it come about in the community. So, very soon, as soon as the Premier comes on, we will connect. We are connected, but we're just waiting for her to turn up. So as you can see, we are connected. We just have to wait until she appears there.
It's likely to disrupt Christmas sales and hinder export volumes. The industrial action between the Maritime Union and Patrick's is intensifying. Bargaining over wages and job security has been ongoing for more than 18 months without a resolution. Now, the MUA is planning a 48-hour strike at Sydney's Port Botany next weekend and 12-hour walk-offs every Monday, Wednesday and Friday in Melbourne during October. I spoke with Paul Zalai, Director of the Freight and Trade Alliance, earlier. Paul Zalai, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia.
How significant is this strike action?
Look, it's very significant. Our ports are struggling at the moment, in any case, just with the heavy demand of both import and export volume. And then on top of it, we've had experiences over the last couple of weeks with different stevedore operations being closed for up to days at a time, dealing with COVID cases. So you throw the COVID, the heavy congestion that we've got already, plus the limited operations that will be allowed during because of this protected industrial action, it just causes chaos to the international trade sector.
This strike action by the MUA, do you think it will bring this industrial action that's been ongoing for over a year to a head?
Look, we need some resolution here. Unfortunately, we wrote recently to the Attorney General looking for some type of reform on industrial action and something that's sustainable. Like, even if we do get a situation now where there is a settlement and hopefully the enterprise agreement gets settled, these negotiations come up every 3 years. So as soon as we finally get a situation where we do get some business continuity, then we're facing the threat again of the industrial action happening all over again.
And what are the broad implications of this industrial action for the economy?
Yeah, there's nobody that's going to be exempt from this. It doesn't discriminate. So we've got a situation with importers and exporters will be affected, and it doesn't matter really what the commodity is. Anything that comes by containerised sea cargo will be affected. So, you know, that includes everything from some food goods through to medical supplies, and then potentially, you know, the toys for Christmas, through to important materials for manufacturing and infrastructure and construction. All export commodities are affected by this, particularly affecting our agri-sector that, you know, after years of drought, bushfire and the pandemic, now they've finally got a bumper crop with some good rains and are struggling to reach overseas markets.
Well, Patrick says over 40% of all containers go through its terminals. Why can't shipping companies just use a different terminal?
So their competing stevedores are struggling to cope with their own workload, let alone taking on more from Patrick's. And then you throw on top of that the COVID situation in Melbourne.
And the Premier is joining us now.
Everyone's good? Okay, good morning Queensland and good morning Sunshine Coast. So today I want to give a brief COVID update, and the Chief Health Officer and the Health Minister will be standing up at 10:30 to go into more details and to talk about some exposure sites. So Queensland, we have 6 new cases today. We have 2 that are overseas acquired and detected in hotel quarantine, and we have 4 local community cases. So I just want to give a brief overview, but as I said, there'll be more details coming at 10:30. And as you can appreciate, we've been getting these briefings right through this morning, so the most up-to-date information will be with you at 10:30. So the first person is a fully vaccinated gentleman who works in an aviation training facility. He was infectious in the community for 3 days, and he was double dose vaccinated, but he only had that second dose, I understand, about a week ago. Now he's from Eatons Hill. The second case is his wife, and the third case, which Dr. Young is a little bit more concerned about, is a truck driver who was living in shared accommodation but has been infectious in the community for around a week. So she'll be going into more details there, and can I say too that the police are speaking to this truck driver to get some more information from him. And this fourth case, which Dr. Young is not too concerned about, is a person who completed their full 14 days hotel quarantine but then tested positive after leaving hotel quarantine. So she'll go into those details. So we've had 9,328 tests in the past 24 hours. 18,482 vaccines were delivered by Queensland Health yesterday. So we now have 64.1% of eligible Queenslanders who've had their first dose, and 45.13% are fully vaccinated. So again, that's really good news. So just in relation to these issues that we're seeing at the moment. So there's no need to panic because Queenslanders have been doing the right thing, especially in the southeast. But what Dr. Young has said that what we will be doing, and she'll give more details, is that we want to go back to people wearing their masks indoors if you live in the Brisbane area and the Moreton Bay region. So if you're outdoors, you don't need to socially distance, and she'll be putting some restrictions on like aged care facilities, disability settings and corrective services. So look, everyone, can I just say, you know, we've been here before. I know that Southeast Queenslanders will rise to this challenge once again. It is so important for people to use that check-in app, and as I said, until we get to that, you know, 80% fully vaccinated, these masks are indeed our best line of defence. So please, Queensland, please make sure that you are continuing to use these masks, especially in the Brisbane and Moreton Bay region. So of course, also, if you have any symptoms whatsoever, it is absolutely imperative that you get tested. So please come forward and get tested if you have any symptoms. Now, the second issue that Minister Bailey and I want to speak to you about, and Minister Bailey and the Health Minister have been working on this, and this is in relation to truck drivers. As we've seen, we've had 7 truck drivers who've entered Queensland who've been infectious in the community since the 24th of August. So from the 15th of October, it'll be mandatory for all truckies that are using the freight pass to have 1 dose. By the 15th of November, they'll need to have their 2nd dose or a booking. And from today, we are starting roadside vaccinations for truckies. There's going to be a special clinic that will be set up at the John Flynn Hospital, Boyd Street, Tugun. So I'll get Minister Bailey to go into more details about that. And finally, Sunshine Coast residents, can I say thank you for coming out and getting vaccinated. We now have vaccination hubs at Sunshine Coast University Hospital and Nambour Hospital. And from October the 11th, the Caloundra Indoor Stadium will also come online as a vaccination centre. And to date, the Sunshine Coast HHS has done 150,602 vaccines. So that's absolutely fantastic. And of course, we want to make sure that as many residents as possible on the Sunshine Coast are getting their vaccines. So look, I'll get Minister Bailey just to talk about the truck drivers a little bit more in detail. We're happy to take some questions, preliminary questions about these COVID cases, remembering that Dr Young and the Health Minister will go into much more detail at 10:30, and then we'll move on to our official opening, which is why we're on the Sunshine Coast. So I'll hand over to Mark. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much, Premier. Look, our truckies and our freight industry have done a magnificent job throughout this pandemic over the last 20 months. I want to thank them for working with government, for keeping the supply chains open and supporting our community in every way. We do know, though, with truck drivers that are coming across the border regularly, coming from hotspots into Queensland, there is an increased risk, and that's why there have been some heightened provisions in the past. But I think today's positive case does show that there is a need to increase those provisions in terms of safety for truckies themselves and also the safety for the community here in Queensland. We've seen.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment. Don't forget that in another 10 minutes at 10 a.m. we come back with our special report for today, and we have 2 very important interviews. The first one is with Aman from the students, and the second one is Jim Varghese IM talking about Gandhi Jayanti. See you all back at 10 a.m.